And then we'll go ahead and just kind of dive into in regards to. Um, so thank you for sharing that in regards to the position, what you're kind of looking for the new challenge, new venture. Um, but what would you say is something that kind of intrigues you in regards to would like to know a little bit more for this specific role?
Well, I'm curious if there's if face-to-face upfront salesmanship is going to where and how that becomes a part of it. I know that sales is the first word in the position. So I was just curious about the extent of that. It's nothing I'm nervous about. I love a chance to dust off my salesmanship tools and whatnot. I really haven't had as much of a chance to do that with my last position, although it did it did come into play some because we are vendors and we did want to upsell services, but nowhere near as much as when more in my retail background before this last position.
Okay. And again, mentioned that you did work in regards to store managers at, I believe, at Target and then also at GameStop.
Yes, sir.
I'm pretty sure there were certain KPIs, numbers that had to be met. Would you say?
Yeah. No stranger to sales metrics. Yeah.
Okay, no worries. And then for the most part, just like you did mention, it's sales and service tech, which majority of the work would be being a service technician. The selling would be pretty much light sales, we like to say, or suggestive selling approach of course, upselling, whether it's uh, the new garage door, since there's multiple different options. It could be from either repairing the door, offering a new garage door, or just in general, once you build that rapport and that trust with the homeowner, if you kind of see that, they've had that home for for a good amount of years, and you can kind of see that the door, in the long run, it's just going to eventually need more additional repairs. So then that's kind of where, you build that trust, and then they feel that you're the expert and just kind of say, hey, well, we recommend purchasing a new garage door and just giving them the option. So
Gotcha.
that's kind of
Understood.
where, all right. Would you say any particular experience or previous experience of doing something like that?
Oh, yeah, very much. Very much, especially in GameStop. Target and GameStop, as far as there's certain aspects that you always bring to the retail setting, but more in GameStop where upselling or more finding what interests a person. And this is what I like, where you mentioned getting to know them, a client, and building rapport with them. So when you speak, it's it's not that you are concerned, it's just more from a place of concern than salesmanship. And I like that aspect in GameStop because I like to get to know people and for them to intimate to me the kind of things that interested them and put a game in their hands they'd never played or heard of, and them come back to me and thank me. It's and I'm in no way equivocating garage doors with video games or anything, but tapping into breaking the barrier that gets somebody to be honest and open up, and making them not and making them not wrong for it, but actually making them come out on top for it. That's what I like about salesmanship, where you can be like, see here, I got you, and that's and one time in particular, I recommended a game to a guy and I asked him what kind of stuff he liked, and he said I want something my girlfriend can watch me play and she won't get bored or tell me to turn it off. I said okay. So I slapped a game in his hand. Not sure if you're a gamer, but I put a game in his hand, told him to go home. I said, play this all weekend, you'll have a blast. And he was going to pick another game, and I stopped him. And I actually said, get this first. And if you come back and you didn't like it, I'll not only refund your money, I'll refund your money and give you the other game free. 3 days later, his wife walks in and calls me out across the store and says, are you the gentleman that refused to sell a game to my husband? And I said, yes. She said, is this the game you sent him home with? She said, yes. She goes, it's the funnest weekend we've had in years. She
Wow.
was like, it was a blast. Thank you so much. I was nervous for a second when she came in. I'm not going to lie, but it worked out,
Thinking the worst.
Yeah. So I like that aspect, being able to if someone softens and then, you don't make them a fool for it. So, and
Right.
then, the next time that you recommend something, you don't have to break through that barrier. That pathway, is already established.
Right. And that's great. Like you said, you kind of felt on based on your experience, and you decided to use it based on this particular gentleman in regards to finding out very positive of how he would be able to benefit from this, and how you said, hey, look, before you take another game, this is the one I'd recommend, and you have a blast, you have a great time with it. So that's great. That's great. And like you said, you established a certain trust. So now they know if they need an opinion, they or in other words, if you want to go ahead and offer a certain game in this case, they're able to trust you with it. So that's great. And again, it does kind of tie in with garage doors, just in the salesmanship part.
Yeah,
Um, you build trust with them. They feel that you are the expert. You are educating them and just letting them know that, hey, basically, yes, this is my job, but at the end of the day, you do have their best interest as well.
exactly. Their best interest and tastes at heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And again, just like in any types of sales, nobody really wants to be sold. They want to feel that they made a smart purchase, a great decision. So by you offering that type of service, they feel comfortable. So okay, so that's a good way to start. And then just kind of in general, in case you do have any questions throughout the interview, if something comes up, you can either feel free just to kind of either notate them or just kind of ask me, but we'll kind of save it on answering just towards the end of the interview. Sound good?
Got it.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of dive into what would you say would be meaningful goals that you set for yourself? This can either be professionally, this can be personal. What would you say?
I'm sorry. My goals for you broke up just a little bit.
Meaningful goals that you set for yourself
Oh,
in the past, either professionally or personally. What would you say? And did you accomplish them? And we'll go into a little bit how did you go about accomplishing them?
okay. Yeah. In my last position, uh, we actually had, so there's three basic pieces of machinery that we as technicians worked on, and I only worked on two of them. Per the size of my last site, there were too many pieces of equipment to work on all three. So we had to bring in a different technician. And over a year, I had to realize that he was not doing his job well. And it became, he wasn't doing it. And so I began campaigning to my boss when this other worker finally left and a deficit was left. I began campaigning for a person who I knew off the job, who I knew would be perfect for the work. Very physical work with a sledgehammer, long hours, a lot of sweat type stuff. And our numbers at the same time for this site were dwindling. They were getting worse and worse for this piece of equipment. I campaigned for over a year. And by that time, we were on a list that was probably 10 worst of those sites in the country for this kind of equipment, for this specific kind of equipment. I got him hired, and it took 6 weeks to reset the numbers. It took an additional probably month to put us back on an altogether different kind of top 10 list, and this was a good list. Since, and this is less than 6 months after he's been hired, that technician is the third in the country for productivity on this piece of equipment. And that site is literally, I believe, second in the territory for revenue generated. And the territory being 7 states in the Southeast territory. I made that my mission because I saw the demand for it, and I saw that we could achieve excellence, and I knew that of our site, and I knew that of the person that I wanted to get hired. It took a long time, but once I made a synergy of the two, everybody was happy. And my boss, my old boss, still tells me, "Thank you for getting this dude hired."
Nice. Kind of found that you could say perfect match, and it worked out it showed and it improved everything, and he excelled. So that's great. And just this was at IPG when this
Yes.
happened. Okay,
Yeah.
right, right. Okay, like you said, you ended up finding the perfect match for this position.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and then in regards to that, something, how did after everything happened, how did that make you feel knowing that?
I I told my girlfriend after, my boss called me and told me, he was like, he's killing it. Like where the old technician used to be there, and we used to be happy if he could achieve 40 units, like 40 fixed pieces of machinery. The guy I brought in just set the record at 110 2 weeks ago in a shift. And so my boss, it just never stopped. He was just like, he's doing amazing. How did this is you were right about this. You were right about this. And I'm like, and I came home and I told my girlfriend, I was just like, I was like, I just feel like I should take a bow. I just feel like I would have taken a bow if I wasn't on a phone call with him. So, but no,
Yeah.
it worked out. It made me feel good. And it made me feel like as a, not only facilitating talent and knowing it when I see it, but also spotting the need in the
Yeah.
business. And that made our clients, because that site was owned by our clients, not us. That made our
Okay.
clients take us more seriously. That made our clients take our opinion more seriously. When we said, hey, you might want to add this service, you might want to add that, we ended up being able to upsell out of it because they took us more seriously, because we were nearly tripling our numbers.
Great. And that's what I was going to say. Not only were you able to, of course, solve the issue at hand, but like you said, they were able to kind of build that trust. They know that, okay, well, now if we do need to get an opinion or we do, it's going to have that leverage. So
Exactly.
good call on that. Great job. Um, and then in regards to, so again, thank you for sharing that. Another goal that you would say that kind of more on a personal note that you had to kind of set and you accomplish, and how did that go about?
Well, hmm, um, I would say, I have a friend who I successfully got off the street recently. I took an interest when a lot of people weren't, including most of his family, and I made a calculated move to to get him off the street, move him in with me, and start generating word of mouth about where his talents were. And his talents were not, living on the street or in the woods and working a dead end job, dishwashing. Um, and he'd worked for me before, but we'd actually both been laid off when we were laid off from GameStop together. So it's kind of funny. I'd say my second goal kind of cohedes with my first, because the person that I got hired, who's now literally third in the country for this piece of machinery as one of the technicians for the company I used to work for, is that person I got off the street.
Wow.
Um,
Kind of,
yeah, I helped him get a new job. I gave him a place to stay. I trained him. I trained him in how to drive and went with him to get his license. He used my car to get his license, and now he's self-sufficient and he's doing great. And I'm so proud of him. And so yeah, I'd say that's a perfect semblance of two goals that I set. And I put a lot into them. It was interesting. I said I campaigned for him to get hired for a year. I had been campaigning for him to get hired before I moved him in with me. But his situation, because the economy is what it is, and because without much formal education and training, if you don't know many people, you can't get very far these days.
for sure.
His situation got worse and worse, and so I made the decision to help him better his situation, and I made the decision through that to help better our company, and everybody won. So I more than double. Pardon?
No, that's great. And I should applaud you for that. I understand that. Um, what would you say were certain obstacles that had to deal with that calculated move? Did you run
Obstacles with what?
into any obstacles, or was it kind of? I mean, that's great that everything worked out in the long run, but would you say if you ran into any obstacles or something, sometimes that were kind of like, oh man, I don't know if this is such a good idea or not? Tell me a bit about that.
Um, yeah, yeah. To be honest, and to get personal for a second, I I helped him get off. I helped him with his battle with alcoholism, and
Um,
and he beat it. And we, it was first it was booze, then it was cigarettes, and we stopped doing that. And and all these different things. But in that, there were some difficulties that arose, and I did start to wonder. And I've had to have a couple heart to hearts with him through our time living together, and but it's always been to help him, and he's always known that. And we're really close friends that way, and so he's always known it's to his benefit. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't like and I had to ask for help. He's a long time, I've our mothers were very close, and I've known him since I was very young. My mom was happy to help. I got her involved, and didn't give her too many details, but explained to her in broad strokes what I wanted to do, who I wanted to do it for, and why he needed it. And put our heads together, made some plans, and really made it better for him despite a lot of difficulty. When I say living in the woods, I mean it. And there's a lot that comes that you have to there's a lot of mentalities you have to train yourself out of, coming from a situation as difficult as that. And I'm very proud of him because he's worked really hard, and it shows, and he's better for it. And so I'm glad that, doubts though I did have them, and cautiously as I went about it, it seems we've kind of made it out to the other side of this. And so I'm really proud of him for it.
That's great. It's a great story in regards because, like you said, as far as you are proud of them, you should be proud of yourself too, of sticking with it because, I mean, for the most part, I can relate to you in a little bit in the sense, without kind of going off on a tangent, is the same thing. Usually when you have someone that's close to you as a friend, of course, you always want best interest and the best for somebody like that. And then when you kind of see somebody struggling, unfortunately, sometimes it's family, sometimes it's other friends that kind of, I wouldn't say turn their back, but just kind of look the other way sometimes, knowing that they do need just a handout, just to kind of say, hey, look, it's at this point in time, it might be difficult, but it's not the end of the road. Like there's always another option. It's just kind of that motivation, that little bit of encouragement, and it seems like at that point you felt that, look, I can help this person out, with the support of, like you said, with your mom, and just kind of knowing that it wasn't going to be an easy task, of course, but you kind of stuck with it and decided to kind of push through these obstacles. So again, that's great on your part. And like you said, based on the fact that it is somebody that's close to you, made it even more of I guess a feeling of knowing that you took care of somebody like that. So,
Yeah.
and then it did tie in, like you said, with the opportunity in
Yeah.
the workplace. So
Yeah.
and like how you mentioned, this person had these abilities that
Yeah.
were, I guess, if not given an opportunity to show, who knows where the situation could be. So that's
Yeah.
great to mention.
Thank you.
So kind of tying into that, we do always want to ask the reason. Go ahead. Did it turn off? Can you hear me? Or
I as well just blink my car.
oh, okay. You good though?
I apologize. Yeah, good to go. I can hear you now.
Okay, great, great. Kind of was saying, okay, I was saying in regards to the reason we kind of asked in regards to setting goals because of course it kind of teaches us um kind of what we're made of. Sometimes we have to kind of be ambitious in a way of knowing that we would want somebody in the deal candidate, of course, to set goals, achieve them. Sometimes we might not get to the finish line on certain goals we set out, but if you know that we tried and we kind of put our effort, and it does tie in regards to our character. So that's kind of what we tend to look for, which kind of ties into the next segment we do is obstacles, how we deal with them, how we confront them, how we get through them. So based on that, what would you say is certain obstacles that you've kind of gone through and had to overcome?
Um, well, I'd say I would say definitely say probably since joining the military. When I left, I sustained a back injury, and I actually got thrown headfirst into a windshield. And so it's um, I remember when the doctor, when I found out I was getting out of the military, and I remember the doctor, and I've come a long way. I've done a lot of therapy and done a lot of strength training, and I'm pretty good now. But at the time, he had said, "I suggest you have your children as early as possible." And I didn't understand. I was 19 years old, and I didn't really understand what he was saying. And I said, "I don't get why." And he said, "So you can hold them." And it kind of the gravity of the situation kind of hit me. And there have been, and I have two children. I have two beautiful children. I have a 6-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. And there have been times, there have been times where the difficulty, brought on by my injury has made parenting so difficult. It has made it that much more difficult to get out of bed. It has made it that much more difficult to throw the kids in the pool, to do the things that we're supposed to do as parents. And but we're supposed to do them, and my kids are worth it. And so, I endured, strengthened my spine, further, and now I'm able to keep up with them. I'm still, you know, I'm still the one to look out for when we have our Nerf gun battles. So,
That's right.
um,
You did mention
yeah.
that.
So yeah, I'm still yeah. Because I'll grab one of them for a human shield real quick. So but yeah, it's that was one of the biggest, I'd say, realest challenges, and scariest, is having to, and being from the moment my kids were born, that was the biggest thing that just kind of bore itself into my head, is when or if this will come to fruition, will this present difficulties? And it did. And I met them and I overcame them. And I'm still the best father I can be to my kids. So yeah.
Great, great, great to hear. And as a father myself, I kind of understand exactly what you said. You find ways to do what we can sometimes for our kids. So again, that's something that you kind of took, like you said, when it finally set in and hit in regards to you have to do something because you want to be there for them. You want to make sure that you're able to do the things that you didn't want to feel limited, like you said, by strengthening out your spine and all that. So I can imagine that going through that. Um, so that's good in regards, and I can just imagine just kind of going through what what you went through because when you're young, you're able, you can do whatever, and your body, you feel like there's no limits. But then once whether it can be an injury, like in this particular case, and then like you said, getting out of bed, sneezing, coughing, anything like that
Yep.
can affect you, and you mentally you're thinking like, why does this affect me? Why does this hurt me? Why does this bother me? But physically, your body's kind of telling you like it's not 100%. So you try to. I can see how that becomes an obstacle. mentally
Oh
challenging
yeah.
as well.
Oh yeah. You got to let, or things you're about to drop that you used to could real quick, bend down real quick and catch. Nope. Got to let that plate shatter now. That was 10 years ago. I can't like little things like that, that you used to be young enough to think you were invincible for. You don't have that luxury anymore. And it's finding
Right,
that out.
right. And especially when it comes to kids, they have all the energy in the world, especially at that age. I personally
Yeah.
have two daughters, a 13 and an 11-year-old.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay.
but I remember, taking them to the park when they were barely out teaching them how to ride their bikes, when they were trying to rollerblade or do something, and I'm out there running with them, and look at just kind of the personal. I've always kind of been active. Baseball has been my sport,
Gotcha.
and even as I got older, I played for some adult leagues, and I just remember running in high school, and then and all that like nothing, and then the older I got, I'm fine during the game. Then the next day you kind of feel a little bit sore, and it does. Your body tells you, hey, you're not a spring chicken anymore. So it does
Yeah.
affect,
Yeah. When did yard work make us sore? When did that
right?
happen? I don't get it. Yeah. So it's just, but now I've learned the value of two things. Well, three things: sleep, stretching, and hydration. So those are
It's
my
true and
big, my
valid.
big pillars. So
Yeah, and the stretching, I agree with you there. I didn't for a while. I mean, even when I was going to the gym, trying to stay active. Even when I was going to like uh, playing pickup games in basketball, like you figure out. But the older we get, we do kind of have to start taking care of our bodies a little bit more. So,
yeah.
okay. Okay. And then in regards to kind of tying all that, any other goals that you can say that, and this can be something, let's say, in example, goals that you missed, or any other goals that you kind of set for yourself, whether it be schooling or anything that you said, you know what, I tried doing this, learn how to ride a motorcycle, anything like that, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. I had, when I got out of the army, I was, I was kind of at a loss for a little while as to what to do. And I moved from Georgia to Asheville, North Carolina. And not long after that, I got introduced with the idea of nursing. And I really liked it. I was a CNA and medical assistant for over 5 years. The last two of which I was actually in nursing school. It was it for me, after the army. And I specialized mostly in seniors with Alzheimer's and or dementia. So I would I worked for a number of years with different companies in multiple states. I would get dispatched out, sometimes overnight if there were emergencies. Other times I was in hospice care with people that were, close to dying. And I had a particular case, and at the time I was in school for nursing, and I also was working for a company with multiple clients on my weekly schedule. And also at that time, I was also every weekend driving 3 hours up into the mountains and doing private care for one specific client that had previously worked for my company. But they just wanted me all to themselves, and they didn't like the rest of the people that cared for him, so they asked me. So I had all that going for me, and one of my clients from my company, he had severe Alzheimer's, and there was a a Sunday afternoon where I was there, and his wife, she was expressing some difficulties with the situation, and she was kind of losing her patience with him. And well, put it simply, the week after that, I arrived 5 minutes after she attempted to commit suicide. And so, not to get too personal, but I'll tell you this: this is how a dream dies. I got home, and I made a deal. I stabilized her and managed to stabilize the bleeding as best I could. Her husband is soiling himself in the hallway, and I'm on the phone with my company on one phone and 911 on another. And it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. And everybody survived. Everybody went home except for her. She went to the hospital. And I made a deal with myself: if the blood washed out of my scrubs, I'd stay in the business. And it didn't wash out, and so I took a hardship withdrawal from school. And I cut back on my duties with my company to where most of it was just sitting with people, to where nothing strictly hand to hand or anything like that was involved, given what I'd just gone through. And so, yeah, I had to give up on my dream, and my goal was to go into nurse. Was to be a nurse. My goal. I had a friend in Asheville, working with pediatric, basically pediatric cases in a cardio tower, basically working on children with heart problems. And I had a plan for that, and I had everything set up. And then this happened, and I couldn't wash it out of my head any more than I could wash it out of my clothes. And so I just determined that nursing wasn't for me. I had a friend, a very close friend, who I moved to New York with for a while after that. And yeah, that was, just to kind of recover, kind of spiritually and emotionally after all that. And so, yeah.
Like you said, it's just kind of traumatic experience. Like I said, just being able to seeing all that, and I guess you can say it was what kind of made you kind of shift to change in that. So I can wow, man, it's strong stuff right there. Um, and then because I did notice that on your resume, and like I didn't bring it up as much earlier in the first phone interview, but again, that was kind of one of the things I did want to go into, so it kind of tied into that. So, you did nursing. Did you do a little bit of background like that when you were in the military, anything like that, or this was after?
No. Wait, did I do any of what when I was in the military?
Like any type of medical work?
No,
No.
no,
Oh,
I was strictly in the military outside of like the like some of the combat first aid they give us. No, I wasn't. My military job was specifically like anything with four wheels or more.
oh, okay.
Anything
So separate.
anything but basically anything but tanks is how my
Okay.
training started out. So I would drive anything from fuel trucks to Hummers to Hemmets, these huge things with waist high tires that take about a full football field to do a whole 360.
Wow.
So yeah, they're massive. We would do anything. We'd lift Maersk shipping containers onto them, or rocket pods, or fuel, or personnel. Yeah, they carried anything. So it was fun to drive. But outside of that immediate discipline, no, I didn't have much medical training in the military.
Okay. Okay. And it was just kind of just something I figured out. Okay, maybe probably did a little bit of both while in the military, and then that's what kind of got me into nursing. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. But again, very appreciated. Thank you for sharing again. I know it's kind of some personal subjects, but again, getting to know you a little better. So thank you for that.
Understood.
In regards to values, what would you say is something you would describe as personal values? This could be something that were you kind of as you grew older, you kind of picked up on, or something that was instilled from you at a young age. How would you describe your personal
Um, Decency. Just be decent to people. That is something, I think I spent my whole, not my whole life, but we spend our young lives with don't good boy, bad boy, whatever, in this, these paradigms. And I think it takes away from just being decent to people. I think good has a lot to do with status, and I feel like and I feel like decency just has more to do with spirit and just meeting somebody as a person. I feel like with good comes recognition, you know, with with decency just comes good sleep. So I'd rather be decent than good all day long. So I that's my thing that I've tried to learn more and instill into my kids is there's a lot that goes into that is patience and being the last one to speak, the first one to help, things like that. And that's, those are really, but honestly, the most over encompassing value I can teach to my kids or that I try to embody on a day-to-day basis or in my interactions with people, whether I know them or don't, is decency. Just be decent to people.
Okay. Um, and how would you say people were to describe you as?
Hopefully decent. No, I I am fiercely loyal. I'm fiercely loyal. I am sometimes I am sometimes faultably passionate about things, and it's usually about work or people. I'm not the type to flip a Monopoly board, Walter. But I do stand up first for those I love and for those that stand up for me. And I do have very rigid expectations of what organized is versus what disorganized could be. And a lot of that is, sometimes I can be viewed, the wavelength can get a little crunchy and people can view me as overbearing, I guess, or maybe just a little bit too impassioned on things. If sometimes, a job, a 10-hour job that maybe was supposed to be more of an 8-hour job, but we've been told we can do overtime, so we get it finished. Um, and but then we got to clean the workstation, and that's when I could see, and I have seen, getting some eye rolls because I'm put in as project lead on it. All right, guys, nobody leaves till this is cleaned up. I need you sweeping, I need you dumping, I need you pulling the cars up, like and I'm getting eye rolls, but I'm not getting eye rolls from our supervisors, and I'm not getting eye rolls from the clients, and none of us get eye rolls from anybody above us because we did a good job. And but the job isn't done until it's done, and in my opinion, it's not done until it's clean. So I have a very strict standards of organization, punctuality. I pride myself on these things. I like to think my mom, she kind of trained them into me long before the military got a chance to beat them into me. But between the two, they're in there pretty good. So
Yeah, then that's good. Like you said, from um, kind of teaching those values from an early age, like you said, just kind of picked up on. Um, and then, what you just said right now, basically, it's unfortunate that when you do things, maybe do a little bit above and beyond work or a little bit more than what is expected. Yes, there are coworkers, sometimes even management, even because they might see it as competition. They might see it as kind of why are just because they might not do it, they're gonna always think that it's a negative when it's actually a positive. And unfortunately, the world we kind of live in, there is more of that negativity more than the positive, which is something that should be recognized. That should be, I mean, we shouldn't do things to be rewarded, but when somebody does go above and beyond, it's usually they're the ones that are giving opportunities and doors will be open. So, but again, it's
yeah,
I again certain situations where we've seen um, candidates that have told us that as well before that if they do extra, it's kind of like that, like say with the the eye rolls. So fortunately,
yeah.
yeah,
So it's fine. Nobody that matters get nobody that mattered
right,
ever gave the eye roll for stuff like that. So I'm all
right,
right.
right. Okay, and then just kind of said that's great. Those values kind of do instill what of course, the ideal candidate we're trying to look for. Um, Accomplishments. What would you say is accomplishment that you felt very proud
I'm sorry, that I what?
feel proud of?
Feel proud of. Well, yeah, my last position, I'd say, yeah, we had it just most recently, and uh, I mentioned the person that was my roommate that I brought on with me, and we eventually, because when he got hired, he got to work in my home site with me. Though we weren't working together because, as I mentioned, working on different machinery. So we get a call from I get a call from my boss, and he is and again we work most relevant and proximate to Atlanta, Georgia, and Stone Mountain, Georgia, in particular. So we got a call from my boss asking us to go out to Birmingham, Alabama. And the reason why was because a technician at one of those sites had basically been cooking the books and falsifying his work ledger. To put it succinctly, he was stealing time and writing initials on equipment that he wasn't fixing. He was basically an all-in-one technician, which was doing all three of those pieces of equipment that I mentioned earlier. So my boss called me and basically said, I need this fixed in the next 3 days. This isn't coming from me. This is coming from my boss and my boss's boss. I said, okay, I can do it, but you got to let me bring help. And you got to let me bring, you got to let me bring, the new talent. And he said, okay. He said, but he's never traveled before. So how are you? I said, I'll handle it. Everything will be handled. And I got us there. I liaised with the management, with the local management there. They did not have a good taste in their mouth where my company was concerned when we got there. We assured them we would have the problem fixed in 3 days. You remember I told you that part about my new technician becoming one of the best in the country?
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't need 3 days. We barely needed 18 hours. And about 24 hours later, they literally were asking both of us if we wanted jobs permanent within that site. They were trying to poach us from our own company. So,
Taking you guys
so
from
yeah,
another place.
they had even, yeah, we'd impressed them so much. They'd even joked with my boss and said, if you never want it, if there's ever a point that you don't want them, please let me know. They can get a home back in Bama. We can move them over here. So
Taking care of.
we did an amazing job, and we flipped the face of that site from what that technician left it at, and it's for jobs like that I got basically where my boss he would always say, I need you to put a big sexy facelift on this for me. And that's what I told. And I had done jobs like this before this one, but this was honestly the most important because it was a big job that I couldn't do by myself. B, the person I was bringing with me had barely been working for us for a month. And C, our clients were already down our throats and mad at us.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going against us on this particular op. And we literally 180'd all of it and walked out smiling. So I count that as a huge win. And the fact that my boss's boss, thanked us personally for it, that really stuck out to me.
That's great. And like you said, you guys were able to kind of show what you guys were capable of,
Yeah.
and facing that adversity or that challenge of needed to get done, but also in
Yeah.
the eyes of not just your boss, but his boss, and then just also the place where you guys went to go fix it. So,
Yeah. It was more so about making an impact. Once we realized we could do it quickly, quicker than they thought and than our bosses thought. We realized we could make a real impact if we worked as quickly as possible. If we were able to cut the time the client thought we'd be there by a third, or rather by 2/3, then that's helping to polish up the mess a little bit better. So it was that was a big accomplishment, and I was really impressed. I was really impressed with the effort we put in there.
on that. Um, Areas of personal growth that you would say is that you feel that you're kind of currently working on?
Um, I'd say overall patience. It's, it feels like over the past 3 to 4 years, Walter, that like society is just a little bit faster and more vicious than it used to be. And I feel that with that, it's made me very aware that I could be a lot more patient, and that there are situations where I bring almost no patience to the table compared to other people who honestly I wish I was more like in some areas. Um and my and personally it's funny. The last question on your on I think what was it called, Spark, on that interview, and
Celebrity?
it they asked if you could, what's it called, what'd you say?
Just to that you can spend a day with a celebrity, and you think that
Yeah,
John Lewis.
John Lewis, yeah. And that and really like that dude, I idolize that guy. I have a graphic novel by him right there behind my left shoulder. So it's I I mean he and me personally, my, not to get political or anything, he just did a lot for my community. Our ability to vote, for one thing. So I and the patience and apparent timidity, which was really just a master class on patience. And that is what I'm trying to get to. Patience in the face of opposition, um, fa- patience in the midst of difficulty. And that's what I'm trying to get to. So,
And again, it's something that, again, I do agree with you. The way times have changed, it's sometimes it can feel a little bit of that uncertainty of knowing if things are changing at this, this pace, and where are things going to be, a couple years down the road.
yeah,
And again, so it's I personally always try to see like that we can always grow, we can always learn from, whether it could be past mistakes, something like that, but we always have to have the mentality of growth. That's one of the
exactly.
reasons.
Exactly. I'm
But
sorry,
again,
Walter. I'm just getting my phone charger here. Seems my phone's
no
about to
worries,
die.
no worries. Um, so that's great. Again, thank you for sharing in regards to personal growth and say patience.
Of
Um,
course.
all right, we'll kind of switch gears a little bit and just talk about a little bit about educational background. Just kind of overall, how would you, if you were to describe yourself, how were you as a student? How did you do in school?
Oh, as a student, I maintained 3.0. I was a I was a strong B student. I had some developmental learning difficulties when I was younger that presented a little bit of difficulty, but I like to think I endured, and my mom saw fit to take the time when I was at home to help me with my instruction, to teach me different to teach me different mechanisms to help me memorize and to help me stay on task and to help me, and to that end, I and to this day, I don't know another person with a with a better vocabulary. My mother used to actually have me read the dictionary in the car on the way to school in the morning. So, yeah, might have been a way to just keep me quiet, but I'm really well read, Walter. I can say that. So,
No, that's it. And I hear that, when you do speak, I do see that sense of vocabulary. It's funny how you said the reading the dictionary, because sometimes I remember that's something I would say, what if I do this with my daughters when they were younger, in regards to instead of using either a tablet or something just to kind of keep them quiet, how you just mentioned.
right? We can sit.
Right.
I mean, nowadays, they probably consider it child abuse. I know mine would.
Right.
So,
Because as a parent, you feel like, yeah, this is something great, but if you look back, as being as a kid, you feel like this is punishment. This is some sort of not
This is
knowing that
terrible.
in the long run it's beneficial. But again,
Yeah, and
things we
and
don't
I'm
see
looking
at a
back to
younger
the
age.
oh yeah, and I mean to her credit, I went to 3 state spelling bees. So and
Oh, that's
I
great.
went and won 2 out of 3 state spelling bees. So I mean, so and she was good at incentivizing. And I got 2 out of 3 game systems with those with as my incentive for getting those spelling bees. So yeah, it worked out. I got a Sega
Good
Genesis.
reward.
So yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's good. And in regards to this kind of helped you out, of course, going on, learning the value of further education. That's kind of when you went, I mean, especially going to nursing, the education that does involve in that. That's something that you felt like um, made you a better, I guess, student overall on whether, putting in the extra time for learning. Because I can imagine that schedule, going to nursing school
Yeah,
could be.
yeah, brutal. So, and I was doing it while I was actually as a CNA. So it got very interesting. But no one ever cared that I came to school in my scrubs. So it worked.
There you go, kind of worked into it. And then another question we kind of asked is, you did mention in regards to you being there for your friend and helping them out, whether on a personal level, but also on a professional level. When it comes to, has anybody ever, helped you out in a sense in that way, whether personal note or on a professional note, something like that. Can you just have a moment like that?
Yeah, actually I can speak to that. Before GameStop, the real, outside of being in charge of of as a floor manager in a restaurant setting, I had never been given keys to a building. I had never been made a manager before. And I was at GameStop, and at the time I was working there part-time. And not only I was part-time, and I was seasonal. I was also working at Academy Sports, and I had contracted gastritis in my stomach. At the time, I'd been working for Academy Sports for about 6 months, and I'd been doing great work there as part of their early morning truck team. Show up at 4 a.m., leave at roughly 2 to 3, and you're just, heavy lifting, pulling stuff off the truck, getting it organized within the store. And I got gastritis and had to call an ambulance and was rushed to the hospital. And I called my boss at Academy because I had a shift there later on that evening. And I called and I said, from the ambulance, said, I don't think I'll be able to make it. And he said, well, I'll do my best to make sure you don't get written up over this. I had never once been late. I'd never once been absent, and I had given them almost 6 months of dutiful service, and I worked hard, And it wasn't that I wanted recognition, but I wasn't a bad apple, I never
Right.
been late before. I don't
Responsible.
know why. Yeah, I don't know why a write up's being brought up at all, let alone with me in the back of an ambulance. And so I had just gotten off the phone with my supervisor at Academy, and my boss from GameStop called me. And when I answered the phone, I said jokingly to him, I said, "What's wrong now?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And I was joking, and I said, "Oh, nothing. What's up?" He said, "Can you work a shift? I know it's last minute. Can you work a shift this evening?" And I said, "Yeah." And I this was after I'd gotten out of the hospital, after I talked to my boss and told him when my doctor's note was going to let me come back to work, everything. And he told me basically, I mean, yeah, you should still have a job. And I was like, wow. So I go to work at GameStop, and my boss basically tells me, he was like, what's going on at Academy? And I told him, and I told him he knew about the ambulance and everything. And he goes, I'd like you to go over there and quit right now. And I'm going to give you these keys and tell you I want you to be my assistant manager. Go tell them you quit. I appreciate what you do here. And I said, how are you going to justify making me the assistant manager from a seasonal employee. And he goes, you have military experience, you have leadership experience, you're punctual. And I said, what are you going to tell to all the other candidates? He goes, that you're the only one with kids. I was like, he's joking. And, everybody else was happy for me. All the other candidates stayed on, and it was a really great experience to work with GameStop. And for my boss to really be the first, and especially in such a tumultuous time where he could have looked at me a completely other way, more like Academy was, like because I was having a difficulty, that I was a difficult employee. And that was not the case. And he really gave me an opportunity. And I really tried my best to make the most of it for him. And I like to think that I did, because I didn't quit there and I didn't get fired. I got laid off. And so I like to always think that I made the most of the opportunity he gave me there.
Like you said, it's just in regards to going through, physical, like imagine the physical pain that you went through. You had to call an ambulance, and for still to be told that from
In the
your
back of an ambulance. I
wow.
was like, this is absurd, but
Yeah.
okay. And I told my boss that at GameStop, and it kind of ticked him off. And he was like, I can't believe. He was like, you've been nothing but good for us. And he was like, I have a hard time believing that you're a completely different employee 2 miles down the road. And I was just like, I'm not. He's like, well, then take these keys and come work for us full time. And so it was good. It was a good 4 years, and he really took a chance on me. And like I said, I like to think I never made him wrong for it.
Okay. Yeah, and like you said, in regards to, I mean, got to know you, got to know your character, so surprised them why they would think a problematic worker or employee in a way. But
Yeah.
like you said, unfortunately, that happened in that position. But in able to open the doors is in GameStop and giving you that opportunity to see what your abilities were and your skill set. So it's great.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you were managing, whether these locations, the two different, of course, companies, of course, uh, technology, or even at when you were doing with that IPG, what CRMs did you use or technology? Are you have related experience with?
I'm sorry, what?
CRMs, CRMs, or technology that you kind of worked with in previous experience.
Oh, okay. So basically what we use is, it's called the Better Pack 555E, and it's a variable water activated tape printer. So we used basically one circuit board inside of it with upgradable software chips, for the software bit, which basically determined what button printed what length of tape, and also a different communication chip that we had to put on and take off of it as they became repaired or got blown sometimes. That controlled the automation. And basically what I mean in the automation is that if you plug the USB cord into it from a computer, after a series of scans, the machine would print on its own. You wouldn't have to push a button on it to tell it what to print. It would know by the package in the system and would print on its own. And that's what I mean by automation. So most of the time when we were, anytime we had to solder or, go to the motherboard or do anything like that, it usually had to do with either the automation or the software chip. So that was, for the most part, most of the technology. It didn't extend past that. We had some interesting Bluetooth controllers that we used as well for the purposes of cataloging serial numbers of all our equipment. But for the most part, it was really just getting in, taking it apart, and the actual mechanics of the machine, of the printer itself, more than just the computerized functionality of it. You have the motor, you have the solenoid, you have all sorts of mechanical parts that we got into, and that was really the meat and potatoes of what I was elbow deep in for my 2 years in that position.
Okay. And like you said, just kind of mostly all the training came involved, of course, to
I'm sorry?
operate. The training helped out in regards to when you went into this position. They offered training at the beginning to operate the system.
They did. However, my boss was kind of absent for my training. It happens. And that's why if you look back on my interviews, one of the things I stress and one of the things I've always liked is a strong communication protocol and training program in whatever company I'm working for. There was not enough there were not enough manual and computerized checks and balances to properly handle all the stuff. Honestly, there was too much nuance to it, not enough protocol established, not enough communication. I'm sorry, what was the original question?
No, I'm just kind of just asking in regards to well, thank you for sharing as far as the training involved. That was kind of the quick
Yeah.
question.
The training there was kind of non-existent. There's training to do, but it's very informal. And my boss, who was supposed to train me, unfortunately, the first day of working, he was there for 4 hours, and then he had an abscess tooth, so he had to run out. He was gone for about a week on that. Came back and had me meet up with another person for training for about another 2 hours. After that, my boss moved houses, and then because of a pregnancy, and then his mother died. So it was literally like availability for 4 months. I mean, called him every week to try to schedule training and to try to just be like, and after the first 4 months, I said, well, I can't walk away from this money because this is guaranteed money. So I have to teach myself this system. And that's what I did. That's really what I did with less than 8 hours of formal training, less than a full day of training. And when I've trained people, it's been for a minimum of 3 days, and I've been asked to go train people, even out of state. So I, kind of took it upon myself. I did a lot of studying. I'm all but memorized the parts manual for all the specific parts and all the ins and outs. And then I memorized all the toolkit they gave us, because some of those parts weren't covered in the parts manual. I did this, and then I attacked. And then I told myself that I was confident enough to handle one that had what I was pretty sure was a bad motherboard, and that I was also good enough to handle one with what I was pretty sure was a bad motor. And in the same week, I replaced both of them. They still worked after. So then I just switched to the next problem I was, before that, too scared to mess with. And my biggest concern was, what if I take this machine apart and I can't put it back together? So, what if I run into a problem and a spring goes popping or something, and I just lose a piece and can't get it back together? And I just had to blindly feel my way through this, and I did really well, because by the time I left, I was the third most productive by revenue generated. I was the third most productive technician in the Southeast Territory, and that is 7 states. I came to that from literally knowing nothing about these machines, outside of their immediate function, which is about all you can cover in the first few hours. So yeah, I taught myself this, and that was one thing, that I was really, I was sad that, that's been one company that I was sad didn't have a training, but that was really what it was. It was just kind of informal, kind of figure it out nature to it, and sink or swim. And well, I figured I'd swim.
Right, great. And like you said, it kind of unfortunate whether it was due to bad timing with with that boss, everything that was going on in his personal life that kind of affected the training for yourself, where you kind of had it was basically what you're saying. It was kind of almost self-taught. Kind of had to
Yeah.
learn as you go, pick up as fast as you can, and just kind of learn your way through it. Which it does say a lot about you in regards to kind of like you said, ties in what you said from the beginning of not afraid of facing the challenge and kind of being put in a position to kind of grow and whether you didn't receive the training, you still find a way to get through it. Personally, I believe and company believes, you do train an employee correctly in the beginning, it's going to go a long way. It's going to, of course, know that there is going to be support, which kind of ties into this position since it's about 4 to 6 weeks of training
Excellent.
for this. So that's kind of it goes with that. We say 4 to 6 weeks because it can kind of be expedited in a way of if somebody picks up fairly quick, product knowledge, kind of retain information. That's usually the beginning part of the first week or two, and then after that, it kind of goes into the field work where they go, hand in hand with a service tech, maybe with the manager of the location. Um, that way, they get a feel for what the day-to-day activities are, because eventually, this is working independently and autonomous. So they want to make sure that you go through the assessment test, of course, and will not pass the training until they feel that you're capable of being out on your own. So they're not just going to say, "Here you go out into the
Yeah.
job site." So that's one thing they do have a good extensive training on that. So
Excellent. Excellent.
feel
That's
that
very
confidence.
encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of based on what you're telling me, I was thinking, wow, pretty much self-taught to run these the operation you were doing. Which kind of goes into the next questions on regards to like aptitude. You're familiar with Excel?
Yes, sir. Very,
Good.
very.
Typing skills, if you would just kind of say, typing words per minute, just to kind of get an idea.
um, I'm proficient. I formerly took typing classes in high school, and I mean, I can keep up. I don't know how many words per minute is considered proficient, but I mean, or depending on the length of the word, but
Right.
I can type.
And for the most part, it's not like you're typing all day. That we just kind of ask in regards to just the aptitude, can knows basic, Word document, Excel, typing skills, stuff in that nature. Um, Basically, one of the last segments as we kind of getting on time frame, uh, leadership. Since basically you kind of picked up with a little bit of the non-existent training, you figure you can pretty much work very well based with minimal things. But what about when it comes to leadership? When you were the store manager, how would you say you would kind of describe, your what's your word style, but just kind of the way you instilled your leadership as
Okay.
a store manager?
So I would say loose but thorough. I'm not the type, when in my last position as a store manager at Target, um, there were really what I saw as two kinds of store managers: the kind that kind of moved around in more formal attire, that were more delegative than they were actually hands on. I do both. I am hands on, so I am so hands on that you might not know I'm telling you what to do. You might think it's just a suggestion. That's how I wanted to be, because that way, when I was direct about something, someone knew I'm not yelling at you. We're in the trenches, and I ain't got time. So, and I, never disrespect people, never yelled at my employees, never had a reason to. I cultivate loyalty everywhere I go, and I know this because everywhere I leave, people leave when I do. Every single time, and they state me as a reason that they're not staying. So it happens everywhere I've ever managed. So that's not, and I discourage them from quitting their jobs. I care about people. I'm not trying to be like, hey, show them what they can, show them what they can do without me. Like, no, I'm not like that. I'm like, yo, you need your job, stay, but I have to say, selfishly to myself, feels a little good that I cultivate that kind of loyalty,
Right.
and I get that kind of work done because people know, and that's the beauty of it. My leadership is such that it's a beautiful thing when you start seeing people who they realize what you're going to tell them, they realize what they're going to be asked to do, and they eventually, hopefully not so eventually, don't need to be told anymore, and they just do it, and everything just works in cohesion like a well greased and oiled machine. And it's and seeing that, and I almost appreciate coming in from nothing as a leader, where I'm not, I am the leader, but I'm not coming into a position with people that are necessarily just experts and ninjas. I like to build people up. I like to customize them for any eventuality. And those are what my workers are. They're, that by the time, and it became something coveted to work on my team at night. It became something because my people were Spartans. My people were ninjas. They did what they were told, and they didn't need to be told, and they did it very well. We did it quicker, which cut down on expenses. We did it more thorough, which helped the morning crew come and in turn eased their startup. So they had to take less time prepping. It is just a circulatory system. And the beauty of it is, no matter how circulatory, when you're the one that started all the change and your team starts it all, it can all be traced back to you. And that's what I like, is I like to get recognition for my people through the work I have them do. And it's not just to get the job done. I want them to have fun. I want people to see them have fun and enjoy their jobs. I want them to see, I want them to hear the communication between me and my people. It's informal, it's familial, and it's effective. That's what, and that is what leadership is for me, is just being able to be myself, put my own self on it, bring with my experiences and skills that I've sharpened over my years of experience, for a common goal. And I like that. I like that, when I got to Target, they were used to going home a whole hour later. And I said, there will be none of that. I said, we're getting out of here at 10:15. That's how we're doing it. And I became known as the boss that got us out by 10:30 every night. And there were people that they were like, oh man, sometimes this person won't get us out till almost midnight. I'm like, that's just not correct. So it's, and finding things you can do that show your talent while bettering your people's lives. And that's a cool freaking feeling, that I'm doing what the boss wants and I'm making these people go home happier than they were when they got here. That's the beauty of leadership, is the opportunity to do that with people.
Yeah, and like you said, just being able to know that as a leader, you're actually going to be there with them, sometimes side by side, kind of. You can give the directions and the instructions to do something where they can pick up, but at the same time, if needed, you'll also be there as well to kind of lend a hand
Yeah.
and show them that I can also teach you by example at the same time as teach you by doing. So that's
Yeah.
good. Okay. Difficult situation that you had to handle being in that leadership role.
Ooh, which time? Let's see. So, difficult. Okay, so there was one time, and it was pretty funny. My boss gave me an extra day's vacation out of it. He was really nice about it. So my son, I believe he broke a candle or something, and there was a piece of glass that I'm talking hours before I went into my shift at Target. I stepped on, and it was basically like in my foot, and basically where my toe bends. So I go to work, and my job consists of walking a minimum of 5 miles a shift. So just all around the store, minimum. Some shifts, I mean, Black Friday, 11 miles, but yeah. So I get there and I'm like, well, I don't know how to do this. So I'm going to gut it out. And I proceed to gut it out until about 9:30, because at about 9 o'clock, the Target I was at had a CVS in it, a CVS pharmacy. The gate would not shut. the gate does not shut. You're leaving. I mean, literal opioids unattended. so,
Wow.
so they came to the store manager at the time, which was me, and was like, "What are we going to do about this?" And I called my boss, and he said, "Well, you can't leave the building until it's fixed, or until you get relieved." And I was like, "Well, that's." I was really hoping to go home and soak my foot,
Right.
but
From the cut.
so instead of being the boss that leaves at before 10:30 every night when I really needed to, I ended up being the boss that comes and gets relieved by his boss at about 2 a.m. in the morning.
Wow.
So yeah, I told my boss, I said, look, I have to work for you later tonight, and there's glass in my foot. He said, give me 30 minutes, I'll be right over. He came and relieved me himself. He felt so bad. He was like, why didn't you say anything beforehand? I was like, because I figured you went to sleep by 9 o'clock, so I didn't want to call, and I figured they'd fix it. So,
Sure.
but that was it was an interesting, it was interesting,
Difficult
I'll say that
situation.
much.
Understanding I mean, the pain, because sometimes, I wouldn't say minor cuts, but those cuts with glass, or even if you're cutting something, could be slicing a lemon, and you have a cut on your fingertip. Oh, just
Yeah,
that pain, or even is it a paper cut? Those little things on your hand. So I can imagine on your foot
yeah.
and all the
It
extensive walking that
bottom
you
of
do.
my foot, basically like right there, only on my toes.
But
Every
every
time I
time you
step,
step, it's pressure. There's pressure.
exactly. It
Wow.
was bad.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was interesting. And my boss was like, "Go home, call me." He was like, "You don't work tonight. You're good. Go home. Have a great have a great
Enjoy
night.
the rest.
Have a great morning." And so yeah, it was challenging.
Okay, good. Good to hear. Um, since you had to go kind of go through that, just one of the final questions is one instance that you can say when you were, as a store manager, when you had to deal with a difficult situation, and this could either be with, a disgruntled employee, it could be just kind of having issues. I can just imagine, you know, the people that would go to Target, just a customer or an issue. I'm pretty sure there's multiple instances, but if you were to say one that kind of pushed you to think about why are you here? Why, kind of got you to think like that? What would you say?
Okay, I got a good one. So I was actually at GameStop, and I was with I was in training for my management position. This was while I was training, and my boss had stepped out, and at the time we had a different worker come in from a different store to help us out, and he was their manager. He was their assistant manager. So me and him were basically the same position. I was just in training for it, and I got to know him, and he's to his credit one of my closest friends now. But I had gone in the back for lunch, and he came into the back room, and he said, I need to call 911. There's a gentleman out here talking about bringing a gun into the store." And I stood up, and I said, "Point him out to me on the screen." And he said, "Okay." And he pointed to the guy, and I said, he doesn't look that bent out of shape. He goes, "He just threatened to bring his gun into the store." I said, "Okay, stay here." And so he stayed in the back, and I went out front, and I point blank just asked the guy, who was pretty decently solid in stature. I said, "Are you the gentleman that's talking about bringing a firearm into my store?" And he said, "Well," and he tried to kind of go around it. And I said, "Well, this is just BS. I just want to trade a game, and I don't have my ID, but they won't let me use my carry permit." And I go, "They won't let me." And I looked at him. I go, "They won't let me use it either." He goes, "Well, they won't let me use my military ID." And I said, "They won't let me use it either." And the moment he realized, and he was shouting, and I said, the moment he heard me say, "They won't let me use my military ID either," he, he was like,
Kind of change.
"Wait, you're in the military?" I said, "Yes." And he had an army retired hat on. And I go, "I'm Army." And he well, I didn't know that. And he, you know, it's kind of soldier speak. Well, how you doing battle? And but I said, look, right now we need to talk about the fact that you're kind of scaring the people in this store, and that my coworker right now doesn't want to come out until this is dealt with. So what am I going to go back there and tell him? That I need to call 911, or am I going to tell him you left quietly? And he goes, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry anybody. I hope. And he turned around to the whole story. He's like, I hope y'all all have a nice night. Guy gave me a fist bump, said, please apologize to your coworker for me. Turned around, walked out. And that, and it was funny because looking back on it, by the end of it, it wasn't much. I get how it looked, but it wasn't that bad. And from how my coworker made it sounded insurmountably difficult to deal with and tackle. And it sounded from the moment it was brought up to me like I was out of my league to deal with it. But it was my store, and I was the manager on duty, and it was my job.
Had to make the decision to handle it. And
yeah. And if if other people weren't out there and my own other associates weren't out there, I might have closed the door. I might have locked the door and said, all right, call the police. But we didn't have that option. And so I went out and I put this gentleman at ease, and it worked out to everybody's, it worked out for everybody, including that gentleman. And he didn't need to be banned from the store. Cops didn't need to be called. Nobody needed to be freaked out. But it was just he was admittedly drunk. I could smell that on his breath. I could smell it smelled like Miller time from his perspective. But other than that, it was an easily solvable situation that could have gotten out of hand, but didn't. And I was integral in that. And it's situations like that, it didn't, and you say, did it make you doubt or be like, why did I get into this? Or maybe this isn't for me. It honestly kind of further secured that I was where I wanted to be, or at least doing, I like leading people. I like putting people at ease. I like interfacing with customers. I like helping them and changing their status from pissed off to happy. I like that. I like the ability and the opportunity to do that because I'm good at it. And so, that was really one huge instance. And I've had worse, I've had cops get called. I've had to, have my own employees arrested and send them off in handcuffs. Yeah. And there's some things that have happened, but one that, really made me say, that could have made other people say, why am I in this business where somebody can mention having a gun, bringing a gun into the store? It made me feel good where I could turn it around and nobody who wasn't in the store already when it happened would have known what happened. That was because of me. And that's what I liked about it. That's what it made me think about after it happened.
Right. Just kind of, like you said, just kind of kept your cool, decided to, as a person in the role of being in charge of the store, you had to de-escalate, diffuse the situation. If needed be, like you said, take extra precautionary actions. But once you kind of observe the individual, felt that okay, maybe I can deal with this situation personally, and then again, happened to be also Army, so you kind of had that that worked to your advantage right there, I would say, and
it was a big sigh of relief.
Yeah, that helped. That's good. But in overall, in general, just to go out and just face that, kind of show that took initiative of being responsible for, like you said, for everybody in the store, whether it's other customers, employees, and then just as yourself. So that's great. And again, it does show in regards to leadership skills. So good to hear overall, Anderson.
Thank you.
But this kind of brings a little bit of the conclusion. I know we did kind of hit our time frame for the day. Very, very glad to have this opportunity to get to know you. Because again, this is kind of where we put, we see the resume, we talk about your work history, but when we actually get down to getting to know the person, because we want to make sure that this would be a great fit for you, but then also that you be a great fit for the company as well. We like to take care of both sides. So that's kind of what we feel that these interviews do help out a lot. At the moment, again, I would say thank you for sharing. This would be the perfect time. If you have any questions in regards to the position, in regards to anything that maybe arose from the last time we had a conversation?
So far so good, honestly. I think, I you definitely, one of my big things was, like I said, and like I've made abundantly clear, is training, and communication and protocol. And it seems like you guys have a finely tuned protocol where training is concerned. So I look forward to, look forward to learning a little bit more about it if the opportunity presents. But at this time, I'm good on all my questions for the most part.
Okay, great, good to hear. One last thing that I did want to bring up, when you did submit your application, for some reason it wasn't allowing me to open it. I had it might use a different or a third party app. Wait, let me just do this. I'm gonna go ahead and just stop the recording.